Now, having looked before coffee at the macroeconomic picture, it's time to turn our attention to the microeconomic view. With our second roundtable, Foreign Investment in Hungary, an Accelerator of Transformation. Investors in many sectors consider Hungary an ideal location to implement their latest technologies and thus to contribute to the modernization of the local production system, to the increase of productivity, and to the creation of high value-added services jobs. To discuss why Hungary is their location of choice and what support they have received and are still receiving from local institutions, please welcome Dominique Carouge, Executive Vice President in charge of Business Transformation at Sanofi, Eckart von Klaeden, Head of External Affairs at Daimler AG, Péter Noszek, CEO of Nestlé Hungary Limited, Melanie Seymour, Head of Global Client Services and Head of Blackrock Budapest, and our moderator, and this time you get a proper journalist, Valerie Hopkins, the Southeast Europe correspondent for the Financial Times. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours.
I'll sit on the closest. Thank you very much for that introduction. I am indeed a member of the foreign press that the foreign minister referred to this morning. And I'm very eager to have this discussion with a lot of high-level business leaders here in Budapest. And I was thinking that just so that we're all on the same page, maybe we could all start with a sort of a brief introduction about what your companies are doing here, the scope of your operations, and how they fit in to your global operations. So maybe we can start all the way over here with you, Mr. Noszek.
Thank you very much, and thank you for IPA to have invited us here. So I'm Dominique Carouge from Sanofi, and Sanofi and its predecessor companies have been here in Hungary for more than 100 years, and in reality, Sanofi invested in Kino, a well-known Hungarian company, way back in 1991, so more than or about 30 years ago. So we have been here for long. We have a strong presence here with 4 manufacturing and distribution facilities across Hungary. And we are one of the strategic partners of the Hungarian government since 1993. We also are the 16th exporter from Hungary, and we have been the top employer in 1998, and we are the second pharma company in Hungary. So we have a very long presence here, and the question is not why we are here, it's why we stay here and why we continue to invest here and why we will continue to invest here.
Excellent, thank you. Please, Mr. Noszek.
Good morning to everyone. I'm Péter Noszek. I'm a Nestlé veteran, 28 years with the company. I'm actually the oldest Nestlé employee in Hungary because Nestlé took over the predecessor of Nestlé in Hungary after I was hired. In Hungary, we have 3 factories, 2,400 people. In the 3 factories, we manufacture coffee mixes and Nesquik cocoa powder, which you probably all know. This factory is in Szerencs. We have another unique factory in the Nestlé world, which makes Easter Bunny and Father Christmas chocolate. This is the only factory like that in the Nestlé world. And then we have another factory in Bück, which is closer to the Austrian border. The other 2 factories are northeast of Hungary, where we produce pet food. What is interesting is that this pet food factory is the second largest in Europe for Nestlé, 200,000 tons of pet food produced in that factory. The 2 other factories produce somewhere around 45,000 tons. And Nestlé, as I mentioned, has been in Hungary from '91. We are the biggest Swiss company in Hungary, the biggest investor, and also the biggest employer. And last but not the least, I think it is also important to mention that we have a turnover of somewhere around 140 billion Hungarian forints, let's say half a billion euros, out of which 63% is for export.
Wow, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Seymour.
So we really are the new kid on the block. We only arrived in 2017, and we came and started completely from scratch. It was the first time Blackrock had ever opened an office from scratch. Every other office we have around the world has come either through Blackrock or from an acquisition. So it really was innovation for us in its biggest form. We now have just over 650 people in one office. The aim is we'll probably end up being around 800. And it has become a microcosm of Blackrock. We have most functions within Blackrock represented here. But the real stream that has run through, and some of you will remember me saying 3 years ago, we're not a shared service centre, we're an innovation and technology centre. And that innovation and technology really does embed through every function. So functions aren't really coming here just to look for a cheaper way of doing the same thing. It really is about how do we find better ways, how do we use the talent to really look for the next level of technology, the next type of innovation. And that's what we've been able to achieve here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Mr. van Klaeden.
Yeah, I'm Eckart from Klaeden. I'm with Daimler. And one of the most famous brand we have is Mercedes-Benz. And so we have also a facility here in Kecskemét. Groundbreaking was 10 years ago in 2009. Since 2012, we are producing cars here, some models exclusively in Hungary. So for instance, the CLA Coupe, the CLA Shooting Brake, they are made in Hungary exclusively for the world, are exported from Hungary in more than 180 countries, producing, as I said, since 2012. In 2016, we crossed the 500,000 threshold. 2 years later, the 1 million threshold, and since then we are producing more or less up to 200,000 cars a year in Kecskemét.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, Mr. Carouge, I appreciate that you did my job a bit for me by posing your own question that I would now like to ask you, which is, why have you stayed and why have you continued to upgrade? I mean, in 2016, I think you invested in another new factory, so maybe you can discuss a bit more how and why you've continued to your involvement here. So
we continue to invest because when we first came here in 1991 through the acquisition of Kinoin, what was important to us was the production expertise and the chemical production and the chemical development expertise we found in the country and that we kept all along the way. But along the years, we also invested in R&D. This morning, it was just discussed in the panel before, the importance of R&D for Hungary, and we invested in R&D as well as in clinical trials. And we have spent last year 300 billion of forint in clinical, or almost 300 billion of forint in clinical trials in the countries, and we found a huge depth of expertise. And what we are looking now is really to look at how services can also be optimized, and that's what you mentioned a few minutes ago, but not services for services, services through innovation as well, and the discussions that took place just before on the importance of innovation and digital is absolutely critical.
Thank you very much. Mr. Noszek, we were to stay on the frame of R&D and reinvestments. I wonder if you could talk a bit about how Nestlé sees that here. I mean, we heard on the previous panel that Austria has 2.5 times as much R&D investment in Hungary, and that only 20% of the funds are reinvested in Hungary compared to 40% EU average. Where is Nestlé on this, and what are your plans for the future?
In case of Nestlé, we have manufacturing mainly, but in the syringe factory, which I mentioned, where we have the coffee mixes, we have a small, what we call CTAG, which is a category technical development team. What is interesting is that to this team, we have people reporting from as far as Middle East. and from other countries as well. And this is really for developing new products, new coffee mixes, which we export to more than 40 countries across Europe and even further. So R&D is, in Hungary, is a relatively small part compared to especially the big chunk of what Nestlé spends on R&D, which is somewhere around 1.7 billion Swiss francs. So for the Hungarians, it's somewhere around 500 billion Hungarian forints. That's quite a nice amount of money. What we do here is mainly manufacturing. And the reason Nestlé is developing in Hungary a lot, because I remember when we bought the company in '91, we had something like 20,000 tons of production, and the business was somewhere around, let's say, 10 million Swiss francs. Today we are at $500 million. It's mainly the location and the people. So the expertise of the people and the fact that there was a very long tradition of food manufacturing in Hungary.
Thank you. Ms. Seymour, as the self-described new kid on the block, you've been here since Blackrock started, I guess before they started operations in 2017. What was it that drew Blackrock to Hungary to open an unprecedented new office here?
So it really was talents. We were looking for where should we open a new office, probably in Europe, where we can attract the next generation of talent, to ensure that when we look across our whole talent profile, we have the right people in the right locations to keep us at the top of our game for the next 30 years. And anyone who knows Blackrock knows that we're really forward-thinking. We're never looking at what should we have done, it's always what's the next 10, 15 years. And the more we spent time looking at Hungary and spending time with HIPAA and with AmCham, we really began to see this different mindset in Hungarians. And what we were looking for was, we didn't want people that we would be able to give a set of tasks to do and they would do them really well. We wanted people that we could give real business problems to and they would come with solutions. And that's what we began to see in Hungarians. And I call it now this intellectual curiosity. For Hungarians, I think they call it they're challenging. But it really is this ability from an intellectual standpoint to actually take something that's been there for a long while and challenge it and look at better ways and the next generation of way of doing things. And we're really seeing that happening.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. van Klaeden, can you tell us about what's happening, what's going on with the future now? You've announced a new investment in Kecskemét. What's happening with that? Can you update us on the progress? It's still not fully ready, right?
Yeah. First of all, we are really committed to Hungary, and this is a true success story. And beside of the points the colleagues made, and of course it is the workforce, its skills, it is also the infrastructure, and here the government on all levels is very, very helpful. It is the stable political framework coming along also with the membership of Hungary in NATO and the European Union. And it is the entrepreneurial spirit in the government and also in the agencies. Robert and his team, HIPAA has already been mentioned. So this all makes Hungary really, I wouldn't say unique, but close to unique and close to excellent place to invest. And of course, we would like to keep this, and we would like to benefit even more from it. And so we are committed to enlarge our facility in Kecskemét under the catchword Key 2. But also you are aware that the automotive industry, the car industry, is in one of the maybe most challenging transformation processes it ever had. Our phrase is, we invented the car and now we have to reinvent it. We have to invent it again. And it is the challenges coming from new ideas of mobility, from different powertrains, CO2 regulation, a very ambitious European regulation and all the trade conflicts coming up. So we have to be a little bit more flexible on the timeline. And this is true for all our production sites all over the world, and it's also true for catch commit. But nevertheless, it's not an issue of whether or if, it is just an issue of when.
Thank you very much. And can you expand a bit on the role that you see Hungary specifically and the operations here in Hungary playing in the future of the automotive industry?
Regarding our plant, for instance, I told you already that there are some models we are producing exclusively for the world, and we will keep with that. Depending on what will go on, of course, we will also revise our portfolio, and maybe there could be new models coming also to Hungary, but this is not fully decided now. But beside of the issue, how many and which cars are produced here, and this is still a remarkable number, and it will be a remarkable number also in the future. It is the technology we have in the company, in the plant, and our facility in Kecskemét is, I would say, one of the role models for a really future-orientated, a really progressive art of producing. So, for instance, we have now driverless cars and trains within the facility, bringing the parts to the assembly line. We use drones for transporting parts, and all these things we are testing in Kecskemét, and others in our production network are copying that. And so also in that regard, Hungary is really an entrepreneurial and leading place for us.
Wow, that's fascinating. I hope I can come and visit the plant soon. Maybe we can now go backwards, and I can ask you, Ms. Seymour, I read that approximately 1 in 8 of your employees now are actually repats to Hungary. So, and the foreign minister also mentioned that this morning in his remarks. Can you talk a bit about how you were able to attract, I mean, the competition has to be pretty stiff in the current labor market. How were you able to attract these Hungarians to come back to Hungary, and how are you retaining them? What are you sort of looking at in the future?
So this was an initiative, and Robert will know the whole story of my passion for this when I first came. Once I knew I was taking this role, it's like everything, you start realizing how many Hungarians you know around the world. And this one theme came through with all of the Hungarians I spoke to that weren't in Hungary, was that Hungary is home. And regardless of where they live in the world, what they've been doing, how long they've been away, they have this desire to, at some point, come home. But the big thing that was stopping them was, we've had this really great education, we've moved abroad because we do not believe we can have the same career opportunities in Hungary and be able to properly utilize our skills, our experience, our education within Hungary. So what we looked at was, if we come and we can start to offer those same opportunities, because the Blackrock model is a pure global model. So we have people in Hungary that report into San Francisco, into Asia. Some people here manage teams in San Francisco and Asia. So there isn't any different hierarchy. So regardless of where you sit in the world, you could be doing the same job. And I really had this passionate belief that if we went and started talking to Hungarians that lived abroad, we could attract them back. There was lots of questions around whether that was actually possible, but I'm me, so I just carried on. And as Minister Seato said, the first event really cemented that belief for me when we was in our office in London. 80 people accepted the invitation, about 120 turned up. And we now do those events throughout the world. We've done events in New York, in Germany. We're on, I think, our 4th event in London, which is next week. And what we're seeing is exactly what we believed, is that Hungarians want that opportunity to come back. And normally it's a life event. It's either they're having a family, their parents are getting older, they have a reason to be back around their home. But we're seeing that they come back and they see, in some cases, they've been away for 10 years, and they see a new Hungary. And they come and see something that they didn't realize. They hadn't noticed how much Hungary had changed. And they're really excited to be part of it. And our job is to make sure that the type of career paths we're giving people enables them to stay in Hungary. That we're not limiting them, we're not putting some sort of ceiling on what you can do in the office in Budapest, because it shouldn't be any different to anywhere in the world.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask both of you about another topic that we've talked about earlier today, which is the wage surge. The minister said it's gone up 70%. It's probably the wages have changed quite a lot since both of your companies began here. Is Hungary still an affordable and place to invest? And is it still a good climate when you consider the rise in wages here? Yes.
We have heard this morning already a couple of times that affordable is relative. I think what matters is if the wages are increasing, on one hand, is very good for us because we are an FMCG company. The more people earn, the more they can spend on food, and one of the things what they will do is they will go for more premium and better quality. So on one hand, this is really good. On the other hand, what the biggest question mark is, and that again we have heard a couple of times, is the productivity and the competitiveness. So if we can combine the two, the increase of the wages and the improvement of the economy and the standard of living of the people and the purchasing power increase, if we can combine that with an improved competitiveness as well as productivity, I think that's really a sort of a virtuous circle. So I think not only Hungary, but all countries should go in that direction. And for us at Nestlé, this is what we are trying to do. Last year in our northeast Hungarian factories, we had a wage adjustment of 25%. And of course it was needed because even in that area of Hungary or that region of Hungary, which is a little bit less developed than maybe the western part, we need to be competitive, and I think that gap between the two parts of Hungary is going to shrink, and we need to make sure that as much as possible everybody is equal in Hungary as well.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Carouge?
Yeah, but similarly to what you just mentioned, we also went through a salary adjustment this year in order to make things more equal and more balanced. And what we are looking at the time being is really also investments that will foster productivity and productivity through new competencies, new skills that we can bring on the market. It's very, very important. The talent pool here in Hungary, as some have mentioned already, is very deep and very strong. So we want to leverage it, but we have to recognize that we have to find the right balance between, I would say, the cost of manpower here, but also the incentives that are given to the companies to be here, to stay here, to continue to invest here, and the incentives that we get through, I would say, a better tax environment than what it was a few years back, and announcement like what the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade mentioned this morning about cash incentives, about the cost of labor and the reduction of the social contribution. So all that is contributing to finding the right balance between cost of doing business here and salary adjustments that are needed.
Thank you very much. I wonder if we could zoom out a little bit and also talk about something else that the Minister of Finance mentioned, which was global uncertainty, the German economy, the prospects of a trade war, Brexit. I wonder what you see as the outlook for Hungary in the near term when you consider all of those factors, and how you see that affecting your operations here.
I think especially in that environment, Hungary is a harbor of stability. And, but nevertheless, of course, these events tackle and have an impact on the European economy, and Hungary is a part of Europe, is part of the European economy. And for instance, if we were seeing additional tariffs, especially on the American or in the American European on the American European level, then of course this would have a huge effect on the car industry in Europe, and then of course also on us in Hungary. Or we are also interested in that the Chinese-American trade conflict will calm down, and as a premium car manufacturer, you are not able to produce all your models in every market where you sell them. You need hubs and export from these hubs to the certain markets. And this, of course, is a huge advantage of Hungary. And I told you already that we are producing some of our models exclusively in Hungary for the world. And so the success, our success in Hungary, also as the success of the whole company, depends on free trade and free markets. And of course, we are grateful for the support of the Hungarian government for these issues. But on the other hand, also, if there are clouds coming up on that scene, of course, this will also tackle the company and could also have a negative impact on Hungary. But the main reasons are not made in Hungary and are not coming from Hungary. It's also true.
Do you want to add something on that, or?
I think really just for us, Hungary gives us optionality. If I look at our European model, we have multiple offices. One of the skills we looked at when we were looking at a new office was language skills. I think at the moment we speak 24 different languages in the Budapest office. And that enables us to have that flexibility and optionality if whatever happens with Brexit, whatever happens with regional models, etc. So for us, it really is the flexibility and optionality that this location gives us.
Thank you. Mr. Noszek.
Nestlé has been around for 153 years, and you can imagine that we have been through crisis. I believe that difficult environment or difficult economic circumstances make the strong even stronger because it gives opportunities. And I think this is also valid for countries. It is true that Hungary is an open economy and for that reason a bit more exposed as well. But I think that if I look around with some of the economic activities and some of the measures the government has taken, I think Hungary now is much better prepared than it has been before. I can say that from our angle, people will always eat. We'll always drink coffee. I was happy to see the Nespresso machine at the back, even if it was only one. So that is why there was a bit of a queue. But I waited for my queue. I didn't get one special one in my pocket. So that's. But joke aside, I think yes, the economic cycles are going to come and go. But I think Hungary and Nestlé in Hungary is here to stay.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Carouge.
Yeah, I think the importance of innovation is well understood by the Hungarian government, and we are benefiting from it in the pharma industry. We believe that this morning it was spoken a lot about the automotive industry, the banking industry, and the service industry, not so much about pharmaceuticals. We believe that the pharmaceuticals activities can be a good stabilizer for the Hungarian industry. So I was saying the innovation is well understood, and we still have a few hurdles in the registration of products, or not hurdles, but the process can be a bit faster and can be a bit more agile. So what we would be looking for at the time being is really in the discussions with the health authorities on how to get faster and more innovative in the way we register our products.
Thank you. And I'll stay with you, and then we can come back this way again. And I wanted to ask the panel as well, one of the other things that we've been discussing about is how to expand a bit more the existing workforce, to bring mothers back into the workforce, to give more opportunities maybe to older workers. And I wonder what your companies are doing about that, and what you would, if anything, you would ask that the government could help you with that in terms of policies or plans. So.
No, as it was mentioned a few minutes ago, we are a global company, we have global policies, and we try to obviously attract and retain talents here in Hungary. So attract them is a challenge, not so much because we don't find the right skills and the right competencies, but because there is a war for talents and skills based upon the very low unemployment rate here in the country. So we need to be smart about what we offer and what is the employee value proposition we have. Our companies has developed an employee value proposition that is valid across the world and that we need to leverage. And as it was mentioned as well, we need to make sure that we offer to some leaders and managers in Hungary some opportunities abroad, but we allow them to come back in the country afterwards. So that's what we are trying to do, find the right balance between attraction here locally, but also helping the managers and the leaders of the Hungarian affiliate to find an international exposure, to be completely in tune with the policy of the group.
Thank you.
That's actually an interesting one, because I think I am an example for that. Being Hungarian, you can argue if it is a good example or just an example, but at least I had the exposure abroad for a long time. But if I look at it, Nestlé has a slogan which says, think global, act local. And I think, for example, we have a big initiative, a global initiative, which is Nestlé for Youth. We recognized that there was a big issue with youth employment. In Hungary, actually, we had to change, because now we don't have a problem or such a big issue because of the low unemployment rate with the youth employment or unemployment. We rather have a problem with the retention. So we had to change our policies, and we are trying to not only attract students from the universities or young talent, but we also put a lot of emphasis on trying to retain them. We have a lot of efforts on vocational education. We have various initiatives and agreements with the local communities where we work. Together also with the government, we have a course at Szent István University where we have already somewhere around 30 students who finished this course. And we just extended this agreement, and we hope that it's going to go up to 100. So vocational education is one of these. The other one is, okay, we talked about innovation. And in innovation, I think one very important segment is within innovation is sustainability. And in our Szerencs factory, we produced the first, in the history of Nestlé, the first Nesquik powder, which is packed in a paper, which is fully recyclable. So I think this is something which can also attract, because, you know, sustainability is so high on the agenda in such a big priority. I think with this kind of examples, we can also have the right attraction of the talent.
Thank you. Ms. Seymour.
So with the sort of three things I'd like to raise here, sort of a real macro level. One of the first things we talked about when we came and talked to all of our business partners was, how do we actually make the pool bigger? So we can all talk about who gets the best talent and should we all compete to see who can get the right talent. But to me, it was more about how do we make that pool bigger? So one of those was definitely looking at attracting Hungarians back. Another angle was really starting early on, and I think the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned it, was how do we start working more closely with education, with the universities, not just to do training, etc., but really help develop the next generation of great employees by understanding what are those soft skills they need, how do we help them learn how to collaborate, solve problems, work in that type of environment. So we're working very closely with universities to help generate a really good talent pool. We also looked at, for us, asset management wasn't an industry in Hungary. So we wasn't going to be able to do like we would in many other countries, just go to other companies and attract that talent. So we have, I think it's still close to 50% of our employees have no financial services experience because we've taken that chance. What we've done is said, we believe, and I have this belief that if you have people with the right mindset, the right behaviors, a desire and ability to learn, most of the rest is just stuff. And if you bring them into the right inclusive environment and put in the right programs to help them, you can really train great employees. So we have a big program where our own employees are helping that other 50% come up to speed in financial services. And then the last one is, again, the Deputy Prime Minister sort of touched on this, is how do we build an environment where we can help get more women back into the workplace? And I think the first two are combinations of that because, one, in this fast-moving world, most of the women that have been out of the workplace due to having children are probably really behind in the way companies work, technologies, etc. So we invest again in helping them, but also offering that flexibility that is going to give them a smooth route back into work, not expecting them to come in with that 40 hours, 50 hours a week from day one. So they're the three we're really using to try and get that pool bigger.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I know the auto industry is searching for a bit of a different, more specific talent pool, but how are you also coping with these innovating and changing your employment policies?
I think it's quite the same or the similar approach. It's about education mainly. And we have more or less now the full range of cooperation. We have, I would say, even since we founded the facility, established an own kindergarten. And this, of course, makes it much easier for parents to work and combine the job with a family life. I would like to avoid to say it makes it easier for women, because I think it's also a duty of fathers to take care about the children. But nevertheless, if you say parents, it's both, and then of course it's also easier for women. We established an own school. Mm-hmm. The idea was at first that it's mainly for the expats, but now it's more and more a school also visited by Hungarians. They have the ability there to learn German. So in some parts get a bilingual education. We opened last year our Mercedes-Benz Academy, also on vocational and training and dual education. And we have a very successful cooperation with the local university in Kecskemét. So it's more or less the full range. And also in that regard, it's a role model for others.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are running very low on time, and I will not stand between you and the audience and your lunch, but I just want to, I'll start with you again, just really briefly, sort of what do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities ahead in Hungary, and suspending the idea that they're your competition, let's say, what would you advise your competition if they were looking to invest in Hungary today?
I would say mainly go on the way you are going. Of course, there's always room for improvement. But if I would come up with some nitty-gritty points, of course, there are sometimes concerns about infrastructure and so on. But the main advantage of Hungary is really this entrepreneurial spirit of the administration, combined with the other points I mentioned, the political stability, the skills of the workforce. And this really makes Hungary a great place to invest. and also the size of the country. It is part of the European Union, of the common market on the one hand. On the other hand, it is not as big as, for instance, Germany or France or others, where you do not have always the direct connection, even if you are a medium-sized company, to the people who really decide. And this is also, I think, a huge advantage. And just mentioning Robert and his team also. So mainly, I would say, go on.
Thank you. Ms. Seymour.
I think the challenge and the opportunity is talent, that we have a big opportunity in Hungary to really attract the right talent to study, to live, to work, to stay. But it is a challenge, and it's something we're all, as a business community, as the government, as the agencies, all going to need to work together to really ensure that we build an environment that really does attract and retain that talent. And I think to do that, we need to have more and more companies, not necessarily coming, but thinking more innovatively about what they do in Hungary and using Hungary to really support the talent that is here and not seeing it as an opportunity just to have big centres with cheaper labour.
Thank you very much.
I think we all agree that the biggest challenge is talent and, in general, workforce. That's why we also have to be part of the solution rather than the problem. So as companies, especially big employers, that's why I think all of us try to be part of the vocational education system and similar initiatives. I believe that one of the biggest opportunities in Hungary is also because of the size, as you mentioned. You can test a lot of things here, because even if it is small, it is at the same time quite complex. If I look at our own business, almost every big retailer is here. If I look at the latest phenomenon is the discounters. So we have Aldi, Lidl, Penny, everybody is here. So if you are a company like us, you can test lots of things locally with a lower risk, at the same time with probably a better return on investment.
Thank you very much. And
so to make it very short, because the bulk has already been said already, so the quality of the business environment has improved a lot, and we are now in a stable state. We know where we are, and it's relatively easy to build from the base that the Hungarian government has put in place. In one word, I would say that the challenge and what we need to look at is really training, and training in an innovative way, training of the workforce and training of our own workforce, and how we can relate to the local authorities in improving on training, facilitating training, and helping the training of the workforce.
Thank you so much. I am very grateful because I've got a lot of story ideas. So without further ado, I would like to invite a lunch announcement.
Thank you, Valerie, for excellent preparation. That's what happens when you get a real journalist. Thank you to our panel.